What if every experience, every hardship, every obstacle was given to you, not to break you, but to mold you and strengthen you? What if the center of your suffering was actually the key to ultimate health? And what if your own pain was meant to be the catalyst for your greatest purpose? Welcome to Buddha Belly Life, empowering purpose, mind to microbiome.
Here's a question for you, or here's just, I think, something to ponder. Power. I know you and I talk about that a lot. I know, I think when we talked earlier off camera before, I shared a little bit about that word holds a lot of power for me. I realized through some work I had done, and I've done some like EMDR work, which is an alternative therapy too. It's very mind-centered. And I realized that a big problem for me in my early life that affected me as an adult was the feeling of powerlessness. So I am much like you, where I want to be a strong female. I want to be taken seriously. I am powerful, right? I'm always fighting for this power on an obvious level, because internally this powerlessness could just infect me, and it scares me, and I'm always running from it, right? And it was really through doing that work and reframing how I viewed so many things and saw myself as truly powerful deep down that it helped. A lot of stuff, especially chronic, panic attacks and fear, a lot of fear, right? And so we were talking about things like trauma and being children of trauma. And I know we talk about ACEs and stuff, which is adverse childhood experiences, and how much, and I had asked you, I said, and I asked John, you guys, I said, hey, do you mind if I ask you this question? I said, you don't have to answer it, but this is what I do. This is a little bit about me, but can I ask what your childhood was like? Because she had such an excruciating amount of pain and health issues as a child. And I personally have seen some really common ties when it comes to that with people I've worked with and coaches and things like that. And so I asked her this question. So Dawn, will you share a little bit about some of your trauma and things in your life that were components of, I'd say, some of your health and pain, or could have been? I mean, what do you?
Yeah, I actually, so when I was younger, I was an only child, and my mum had me when she was 23. So she was young, but not that young. I'm 42 years of age. And my mum had me to please my dad. My dad wanted children, and I don't think that my mum actually wanted children. So I came into the world where my mother was my predominant carer, because my dad worked 7 days a week when he was hardly around, with a mum who wasn't coping, who was young and isolated. Her parents didn't want anything to do with her in the beginning stages because she didn't marry into a Catholic family. She married an atheist. So they didn't even go to the wedding. The first year of my life, I was just with my mum, and my mum wasn't coping. And I wasn't aware of this until I was older, until I think I was...
Of course not.
Yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea about what my mum was going through until I became a mum myself. And I was like, wow. Can you imagine not wanting? And I wasn't aware of that until my dad came over from England to come and see my son. And Alfie wasn't sleeping, and my dad turned around and actually told me something. And he said, you know that your mum never really wanted kids. She did it for me. And I never was privy to that. So being a new mum and realizing that, and going, wow, imagine being 23 years of age, not wanting a child and doing it through fear of losing your partner, and having to deal with this child on your own and not getting any support from your partner. That's got to be hell. So I started to see a deeper connection in relationship to, I never had a bond with my mum. Therefore, I was replaying that out with my son. Do you see? I started to see the connection between what we experience as a child, what we experience from our parents, we start to replicate in our own lives unknowingly, which is going back to the subconscious programming. So when I started to look into the relationship with my mum, I realized that my mum held the space for contempt and hatred of she didn't like me because I took time away from her husband as well. So she resented the fact that I had a close bond with my dad. So then I was punished for that. I'd be ignored, I'd be beaten, I'd be hurt, I'd be emotionally scarred, I'd be physically abused. So many factors of abuse were coming along. I'd be locked away, I'd have no privacy. I was constantly fighting for freedom. I'd have to keep my mouth shut. I'd be walking on eggshells all the time. I remember this particular one that's coming through right now, so I feel that it must be important for me to share, was I remember I got on the school bus and I remembered that I'd left my cereal bowl in the living room. And I, all day at school, was frightened to death what I was going to walk into when I got home. I thought my mum was going to go mental. I didn't wash up. I didn't, oh my God. And I could feel the anxiety all day at school of this fear. And I opened the door and I remember creeping in and I remember my mum lunging at me and going insane. She'd been pacing all day at the anger of me leaving the cereal bowl and leaving work for her to do. She had been pacing the house all day and she lunged at me and attacked me. And I remember just having those kind of experiences throughout my childhood, the fear. I vomited on the school bus once and I was so frightened to go home because I knew that if I went home, I wouldn't be safe, that I'd have this attack again because my mum didn't like me being in the house. The more that I was out of the house, the better it was for both of us. So whenever I was forced to be at home, that's when the issues would come. And it would later come out that my mum had bipolar, but it was undiagnosed until pretty much it was too late. And she was put in a mental health institute. She was actually taken away and put in a mental health hospital. She was sectioned in the UK. So she was actually taken away and sectioned multiple times. But so that's an insight into my nervous system being triggered from a very young age, that not wanting to be seen, not wanting to be heard, not wanting to even be witnessed. So how could I express my emotions? So I learned to bottle my emotions up. And being an empath, what an empath means is that you feel other people's pain, you feel other people are struggling and suffering, so you take it on yourself, thinking that you're helping. So I saw that my mum wasn't coping. On some level, I understood my mum's pain, so I started taking on my mum's pain. And it just became this burden that my little body couldn't cope with it. And I ended up just getting sick all of the time, which then perpetuated the cycle of the more sick I become, the more abuse that I got. And it was just this cycle that went on and on and on.
Do you have a desire for fulfillment? Does helping people tap into their own health mentally, emotionally, and physically fire you up? Do you believe in the impact of the gut microbiome on overall wellness? You may be an HWCA coach. For more info on our cutting-edge health coach trainings, visit hwcacoach.com.
For people that don't quite understand some of this, there's so many. Thank you for sharing that. There's so many components of what you're talking about, on so many levels, but especially children, that empath tendency. I am too. And often when a child is in an environment where with a mentally unstable parent or caregiver, they can become hypervigilant they read people very well because they learned they had to. It was a survival mechanism. They had to, because they couldn't control, because there wasn't, it didn't make sense. The events didn't make sense. It's not like you said, okay, you knew you left your bowl out, but the punishment didn't fit the crime. And I guarantee there's probably a lot of moments that you did nothing. I mean, you could be just sitting there and something would just happen because you were just the recipient of that state of mind that she would be in. And so what a child is, that's survival mechanism, that they learn to be so attuned to people. And it can become our curse when we get older too, because we sit there and read every little thing. My husband cannot breathe the wrong way. If he has the slightest thought of something, stressful, or if there's something on his mind, he's like, geez, and it's to the point now where we just communicate. I'm just like, hey, you're totally fine having your own simple thoughts. If it's simple, just fill me in. If I'm like, hey, what's going on? Oh, honey, I just got some work stuff on my mind. It's not personal or something. Okay. Like, you're going to have to explain things like that to me, because if you say nothing, it's maddening for someone like people like us, because like we can tell it's not nothing because we can feel it, you know? But the developmental process, that brain is so fragile. And if you guys saw the interviews a couple months back with Dr. Brant Cartwright on functional psychiatry or functional psychology, he talks about the hippocampus and how one very traumatic experience can actually shrink that part of the brain by up to a quarter, which he says is like, essentially losing a chamber of the heart from one singular event. And so if you imagine, if we grow up in these traumatic, environments or unstable environments and stuff like that, then the effects of some of that is just can be catastrophic for a developing brain of a child. And so and the body and the nervous system is just so interconnected, especially when we're talking invisible illness and some of these things. So that's a lot more people. That's things that we need to also be so much more aware of when we're working with people, when we're coaching, when we're doing all of this is trauma and trauma experiences. Because the body, like you said before, Dawn, the body is so much smarter than the brain. It doesn't let us get away with much. It communicates. So we best not shut off the signals in the communication, right? Like you learned with medication.
That's exactly right. Yeah, pain is just a communication loop. It's your body screaming at you because you've ignored the emotions. Mm-hmm. The emotions is your guidance system. Mm-hmm. How you're feeling is telling you how your body is feeling in that moment. And it's just experiencing it. Is it my emotion? Or is it my husband's? Or is it my child? Or is it somebody else's? Or is it something with me? And it's understanding if it's yourself or somebody else. Because if you're an empath, you get everything, and then you have to just discern what belongs to me and what doesn't belong to me.
Thank you for joining us for another empowering episode of Buddha Belly Life. For more information on gut health and mindset resources, visit buddhabellylife.com. And remember, heal yourself and then empower others to do the same.